This is The Focus Group with business insiders Tim Bennett and John Nash.
I fought worse monsters than you for years in Hollywood. I know how to win the hard way.
We're all business, except when we're not.
Don't f with me, fellas! This ain't my first time at the rodeo.
Hey, welcome to The Focus Group. This is Tim Bennett, here as always with my good friend and co-host John Nash. We are The Focus Group. We're all business except when we're not. We try to be business most of the time. And you can be sure to find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. East, live, right on Facebook Live, or through our YouTube channel, which is also branded Focus Group Radio, and for our multiple platforms, which include audio and visual, with such places as Reverie and Apple TV, which is where I watch us sometimes, John. You can go to focusgroupradio.com and find all the different platforms where we're there. What we do require, our required request, is that you subscribe and like us. You know, everybody wants to measure numbers. You got to get numbers. And we're also on the Derek and Romaine platform now as well. And I think that's through, is that through Amazon?
I don't know how you could find us through them, but I'm not sure if that's the
You're a subscriber to DNR and you go to the site there, you click, it'll take you.
We're a benefit. We're a benefit.
We're added value.
We're an added value on the DNR platform.
So John, how are you doing?
You
watch the eclipse?
Okay. There were two eclipses this week. There were two full eclipses. The first one was astronomical. The mechanics of the moon moving around the Earth, all of us moving around the sun, and that was pretty cool. I went to see it with my friend Pat. I did not have the glasses. I had a pinhole camera. And you know, by the way, if anybody did this and you did the pinhole camera thing, all you saw was a little, you got the reflection of the sun, you saw the shadow of the moon. I did look at the eclipse with my naked eyes because the clouds passed over, and I looked up and I saw the shadow of the moon. I thought, and everybody screams, look away, and I'm like, it's okay, I'm not.
How often do you drive your car into the sun? I was thinking about that. How many times you drive in your car, you're at the beach, and the sun's in your eyes?
I'm sure that there was an ounce of caution as a pound. What is it? An ounce of prevention,
whatever.
Something about prevention cures or whatever. I'm sure everybody kept saying that to just remind people to not stare into the sun for lengthy periods of time, like a second or two. And then people started sharing the glasses that Pat and I were at a park near his apartment building, and people were like, hey, want to have a look? And because how long can you look, right? So I put the thing on, I looked up, it was really cool.
You could have used Karen Allen's sister, Susan, who we all know.
Oh, I love this.
She used Ritz crackers. Because the little holes in there, she's out there. There's a picture of her on Facebook with the Ritz crackers. You could have used the Ritz crackers. Everybody going crazy about getting the glasses.
Or a colander.
Yeah, you could have done that too.
Colander, all the holes would make all the little shadows of the sun. So that was kind of fun. I saw a friend of mine yesterday in a class I was taking in the afternoon, and a great woman. She's lots of fun. I said, hey, how'd you enjoy the eclipse? She goes, I can't tell you. My eclipse glasses arrived this morning from Amazon Prime, and so she goes, they came at 7 in the morning. A
lot of people complained about that.
Yeah, if you order them, you're out of luck.
7 years, you can use them again.
And by the way, I wasn't really that trusting of stuff like that because you could print anything you want, ISO certified, blah blah blah. Oh yay, and your eye burns.
They're giving them away at 7-Eleven.
And the other eclipse that occurred was the eclipse of reality, which was this Phoenix rally that Trump did the other night. I mean,
last night
I said to you, it was like watching a train wreck, right? Like you couldn't take your eyes off of it. He was starting to speak off a teleprompter. Then he looked at the crowd, and then you can tell he just decided, I'm with my friends.
He had to relitigate. Virginia, and then he had to, it was lock her up, build the wall. He bashed John McCain.
I said KKK. I said Nazis. How many times do you want me to say Nazis? Nazi, Nazi, Nazi.
One of the pundits on MSNBC today said it perfectly. He said, we had very low expectations and he exceeded them. He said it was...
Well, my favorite was the coal line. Wash that coal.
Wash the coal. He thinks clean coal means you put it through the washer versus burning clean. Poor thing.
Do we have enough water to wash the coal?
You know, we forgot to do. Who's on the show today?
We have a great show, actually, today. We have our normal Caught Our Eye business birthday. Our friends at Deep Discount have some great sales for everybody. But we're going to be welcoming Kimberly Acquaviva, PhD, MSW, CSE. I think when you earn all those titles, you need to say them. She's the author of a new book called LGBTQ-Inclusive Hospice and Palliative Care, A Practical Guide to Transforming Professional Practice. It's written mostly for those who are caregivers in the hospice and geriatric side of the healthcare industry. But this is a guidebook for them to start dealing with the aging LGBT population, which is something that when Tim and I were thinking about this segment, we couldn't say 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
Was there going to be a generation that required palliative care or even these kinds of discussions? So she'll be joining us to talk about that, and we have some good questions lined up for her about what we can expect if we make it to those rarefied years.
I'm concerned. Well, we all are. Everybody's concerned about the cost of health care and what that means. And if you do get an illness that palliative, where there's no chance of you, it's chronic, I guess, there's no chance of you getting better. There's end of life or issues.
Hospice care.
Hospice that revolve around managing our health issues as we age.
And I think her take on this and the book's take is caregivers and people in these organizations understanding what it means to deal with an LGBTQ individual. Because, so many people going through nursing home systems, or whatever, they're just assumed to be non-gay, and our needs are slightly different, even the way conversations happen with the doctor, et cetera.
I wonder if a gay nursing home, a gay nursing home would be kind of fun. I don't mean it that way, but I mean it's,
I know exactly how you meant it, because the minute
movie nights would be different.
The minute you said it, I'm just keeping my mouth. I see a sitcom in there.
Margarita Mondays. I mean, there'd be all kinds of things you do, right?
In the spirit of Frankie and Gracie, I could see a Netflix series that takes place in a home that's 90% gay. All about
everybody telling them the way it was,
and everybody has memory problems. So what's the movie tonight? All About Eve. Didn't we see that last night? You saw it last year. And every night's All About Eve or Mommy Dear. They only have like 3 titles in the library. That could be.
That's a friend of mine's father. I'm laughing, but I shouldn't laugh. He was watching the Olympics. On the History Channel, but he actually thought it was the regular Olympics. And
which one was he watching?
1942 in Germany.
When Carl Lewis won or something?
No, oh God, why am I forgetting his name?
Berlin.
Jesse Owens.
Oh, Jesse Owens.
Berlin
okay,
Games. Yeah. And my friend, she's in the kitchen and she hears the father going and he's cheering and she's, what the heck is he watching? Dad, what are you watching? He goes, the Olympics. And she's like, the Olympics aren't on. Oh, yeah, they are. He happy as could be watching the old Berlin
Just go,
games.
Jesse, go.
He can run. She was dying. I said, what'd you do? She goes, oh, I didn't tell him. I just let him watch the games. He enjoyed it. Didn't know whether it was black or white. That's going to be me. I mean, that's why I'm laughing a little bit, because I could see me being that sort of like, I look at it and say, oh, the Olympics are on. Let's watch it.
I tell everybody I know, and I'll tell you this, that the irony of the universe is going to be that, how I prize my memory and how people, the irony is going to be, that's going to be the thing that gets me.
We'll all have fun with that.
We'll all have fun with that. There you go. The caring is eking out of your pores in my direction.
You did mention the eclipse, and they said, interestingly enough, I didn't realize this. Of course, it obviously was supposed to happen. A lot of the power companies had planned on a needed surge when it got dark.
I think I read it didn't happen, right?
It didn't happen because so many people went outside to look. So they said the thought of having either additional lighting that needed to be done or whatever, with the slight change.
During the totality.
Because they do monitor by the minute or by the second, that they actually used less power during the eclipse for the 2.5 hours it went across the country. And they said that essentially they said productivity was down in the country because everybody was outside from about 10:30 in the morning until about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon.
And here's a new metric for you. It's kind of like Pornhub when they do their stats after the Super Bowl.
Or it snows.
Or snows. Netflix viewing was down 10%.
Really?
Yeah. So no one was binge watching during the eclipse.
I could have used the internet in Delaware probably because.
Yeah, I can't believe you told me this story about this.
Well, Comcast, so I have this Xfinity or whatever they call themselves. So I keep getting, and I signed up for internet down there, Wi-Fi, whatever. You know all the official names, but I keep getting, you asked me to look at something, and I kept getting this message that due to high volume, I would have to try again later.
Yeah.
Lower, slower Delaware. That's what they call it. So, what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
I like the lead in. So, yeah, slower, duller. What caught your eye? Well, folks, I've got some news for everybody. Your credit score could make or break your love life. Here we go down the rabbit hole. I love that term, rabbit hole. Maybe it's because I loved Bugs Bunny so much growing up. But this one made me smile, that a credit score would, so we have a little graphic that John put up of someone doing one of those speed dating things, and the guy with the higher numbers got the line at the table, 849. There have been surveys done in the past and some studies that have looked to link credit score with relationship stability, but a new survey from Discover Financial Services and Match Media, parent company to Tinder and other dating sites, shows just how appealing a good credit score can be. Financial responsibility was ranked as a very or extremely important quality in a potential mate by 69% of the 2,000 online daters surveyed. That placed it ahead of sense of humor at 67%, attractiveness at 51%, ambition at 50%, courage at 42%, and modesty at 39%. A good credit score was associated with being responsible, trustworthy, and smart. So one of the people from the survey said, if you show a picture on Instagram of someone in front of an expensive car, that might raise an eyebrow, but show someone with a FICO score of 810, now you got my attention.
Really?
Yeah. So I was kind of shocked by this, but they said a good credit score indicates you have a good personality, you have some good personality traits like managing your money, managing your friends, and managing your family, which people look for. What do you want in a mate? Someone who manages their stuff responsibly and is dependable.
Would you ever ask, they
brought it up in
here.
here.
You've been together forever, but would you ever ask somebody's
Never would have
credit
ever
score?
crossed my mind, but as an FYI, a lot of relationship experts claim that if you don't have a conversation with your significant other, your partner, or someone you're dating at some point in time, if you're going to form a union, you're going to get married, you're going to be together, those issues do bubble up later on. Like if someone has tons of debt or they have credit card
debt,
problems, it could cause a lot of problems. So there was a chart that they had that indicated the matchups and the longevity of credit score to love life, and it's that was the one that showed the how important credit was compared. Here it is. So people in the success rate for forming a relate. This is we're showing a chart. If you're not watching on YouTube or Facebook, there's a simple chart that shows credit score brackets. And then there's a rating index on the left-hand side of the success rate of a relationship based on those credit brackets. And it turns out that anything over 700, if you're both in the 700s, you have a higher percentage of a relationship lasting longer than a year, and maybe even going further than if you're in the lower scores. The bigger the mismatch, the higher the likelihood the relationship won't work out in the long run. For example, between two couples, one with scores of 700 each and another with scores of 660 and 730, the second couple would have greater odds of separating. One woman who talked about the survey said that she would love to be able to ask people on a date, but it's one of those real buzzkills. So you're having dessert, you had nice dinner. What's your FICO?
Credit score.
Like, how does that even come up in conversation, right? Like, how does that work? What's your FICO? I just thought it was kind of funny.
I had a friend of mine who was asked to take a IQ test.
By a partner, by a prospective.
She was mortified.
He asked her to take an IQ test?
He asked her to take an IQ test. It was like that Seinfeld episode where George had to do it and then Elaine did it.
I remember this.
But that would have ended it for me, I think.
Yeah, I tell you, there are so many ways we can develop an infinite array of ways to knock somebody off the playing field as a potential partner. I would hate to have this be added to the mix. So now you have IQ test, credit rating. I mean, back in the day, was it a good face? Is it a good smile? Did they like a good joke?
But I think the takeaway of that for me is, and you had mentioned it earlier, if you're going into a relationship with somebody, any sort of relationship, I would suppose, you want to have that discussion of saying, say you were going to start a business and you said you needed to have X amount of resources each month to pay employees or pay ourselves or pay insurance, whatever. And if the other partner can't contribute or for whatever reason can't participate, well, then it opens up having the conversation. So it's the same thing. If you're going to get married and you go into a relationship with somebody that you didn't know has $10,000 in charges at Macy's and has another credit card to its max, and now you're expecting they're going to help pay the lights, pay the internet, whatever, mortgage, and they can't because they have all this other obligation. I think it's a necessary conversation. Yeah.
So there you go. What was the headline again? It was didn't do my thing right. Yeah, your credit score could make or break your love life. One more thing.
One more thing.
There you go.
Mine was quite different, and this caught my eye. I was going through it. Caught my eye for a couple of reasons. One of them is, as you know, and I've talked about it before, I did the Ancestry.com test, or the Ancestry test with my DNA.
You're not what you think you
Horribly
are.
disappointed. I'm Eastern European, supposedly, although nobody else in the family. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't know. My grandmother's born in England. My other grandparents are all Canadian. How I got somewhere around Romania and Hungary.
You don't trust the science?
I don't.
Okay.
But I'm not alone. So
I know you're not alone on this
But
one.
now my friend, Brian from AdMark 360 thought he was full-fledged Italian with a little bit of German. He's twice as much British as I am. The family's never even talked about it, doesn't know where it's come from. So a lot of the issue with the science of this stuff, and you and I have talked about doing the 23andMe because that digs a little deeper.
I would do that, yeah.
It also gives you medical data. So I'm going to buy the kits.
Is the one you did the Ancestry?
I did Ancestry.
And is that the maternal side is stronger than the paternal?
I think so. And then they give you a list. I've got 195 cousins out there.
Okay.
So I've contacted a couple, and they're all quite weird. And I've said, we're supposedly first cousins. Now, that's the other thing. I know my four first cousins.
Family.
This person's supposedly a first cousin. Kind of in the same area that I was raised or whatever. I've asked my mother about it. She said I'd been better off going to a fortune teller with my money. But
I love your mom. And if your dad was there while your mom was giving you that advice, your dad and I would have dug into the science and had a 5-hour conversation about that.
And at the end of the day, my dad could care less. And so that's why I saw this headline. And the headline is, white nationalists are flocking to genetic ancestry tests, but they don't like the results they're finding.
They want purity. They want purity.
So, right. So they said, this guy was on a talk show recently, and they said the results had just come out from a lot of the studies with these Ancestry and 23andMe. Ironically, it just came out after the issues we've had in Virginia and Charlottesville. So this guy's on to do his ancestry, and we had a picture of him if you're watching online here, and it was revealed that he's head of this group called, it's a group that wants to create an all-white enclave in North Dakota. And he's a white supremacist.
Didn't they already do that in Connecticut?
Well, yeah. So he sent in for his DNA and found out he's only 86% European and 14% African.
Sub-Saharan
African.
Yeah.
So he's wound up. So that's the guy there on the left.
Guy with the hat and the beard?
In the blue shirt, right. So he's all wound up. So the woman that gave him the results says, "Sweetheart, you have a little black in you," the talk show host Trisha Goddard told him. Craig Cobb is his name. That didn't stop him from redoing the test with a different company. He's trying to alter or parse the data. So his whole point was a lot of these white supremacists are trying to debunk the science. So they were all for it because they thought they were going to find out that they were all pure white. Well, they're finding out that they've all got a little bit of something.
As we all do.
So now they're debunking the science.
Yeah.
And they said, though, in refuting the science, scientists don't necessarily disagree with them.
Correct. I read that part, yeah.
Because they said a lot of it's murky. So when they've taken these or what would they be?
They're pools of people.
Pools of people. I had another name for it, but they were taking this sets of people and then comparing their genetic DNA, and this is how they were deciding where you were from. And they said, so many years ago, the boundaries were very different in Europe, for instance. So whether you say you're from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, you're German, you're Pole, whatever, the lines have changed so much.
But I did read something.
That exact.
There was something that I read that said that the science of it, though, was that if you had a clear family tree and a lineage, they categorized your DNA results as belonging to a certain cluster,
Right.
and that's how they compared everybody. So there is the reason the scientists were a little like, okay, well, maybe the science is a bit murky, is because some of the procedural stuff for how they decide what group you're in could be taken to task, but 90% of the time they're pretty accurate, right?
Yeah, and they said that, as with any of these things, that it's all about kind of.
John's got to show that picture again,
Which
though.
picture is that?
The one with the guy carrying the banner, and I don't mean to make fun, but
This gentleman belongs to a group that promotes a pure gene pool. He's there with his Nazi flag. The
then John for the ba-dum-bump goes right in. That is such a rim shot.
with the white
supremacists,
what the white supremacists have decided they're going to do now is they're going to do the mirror test.
The mirror test?
The mirror, like a mirror. Look in the mirror.
You're going to look in the mirror at yourself.
So in order for you, they'll keep you in. So if you find out that you've got some African or Jewish blood or something in you that's other than pure white, if you can look in the mirror and you think you're white, and I'm going to quote them, if you look in the mirror and you don't see Jew, there's no problem. You can stay with us.
Someone said that?
Yes. If you see Jew in the mirror looking back at you, there's a problem. You can't join us. If you don't see him, well, then it's fine if you've got a little bit of something else in you. So
this is why we will never win. They rewrite this. I would not want to play Monopoly or Clue with any of these people. They probably rewrite the rules all the time, right?
Right. It says you can remain part of the white nationalist group in spite of the ancestry as long as you don't mate or have children with certain
This is the
ethnic groups.
Stuart Smalley test.
Yeah, exactly.
When he looks, and gosh darn it, I'm good enough. Where he looks in the mirror, oh my God.
So this is the group called Stormfront. And anyway, they were trying to do a white enclave in North Dakota.
I did not read that part, and man, that is twisted.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny. But I do want to try it again.
I think I know you think it's funny because of the picture you found to illustrate the article.
Oh.
That guy carrying the banner. All right.
So business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
John and I, we've been doing business birthdays on the Focus Group for 8 years or more. And I remember this time of year, for whatever reason, there's nobody of worth that's been born. I don't know.
You look in the mirror and you say that.
From business.
You look
from
in
a
the mirror and
business
say,
perspective.
do I see what I see?
You know, next week we've got Warren Buffett. We've had other people along the way, but there's this 2-week gap where there's really just nothing.
What'd you find?
Well, I found this woman. Her name is Mary Spieth. You ever heard of her?
No.
She's born today, August 23rd. She's 60 today. And, I'm sorry, she's 59 today. She's an American political and public relations and communications consultant. She was a former film actress. She was founder of Spieth Communications, which specializes in executive training. She grew up in Philadelphia. She went to Smith College, then she went to the Columbia School of Business here in New York for an MBA. In the 80s, she got a White House fellowship, and she worked for the Reagan administration as director of media and PR for the White House.
I like her quote.
Ronald Reagan. And she said she was credited with bringing the White House into the space age, John, because she introduced them to satellite interviews via the White House. She's the first one to do satellite interviews from the White House. She met her husband in D.C., and they moved to Texas, and she started Spieth Communications. So it's S-P-A-E-T-H. I looked it up on the YouTube, and that's how it's pronounced, Spieth, like teeth. And so she's the president. It's a strategic training and crisis management firm. She's worked with a lot of sports figures and trying to get them out of trouble. She also does something called the Bimbo Memo, which recognizes monthly communication missteps.
Now, that sounds like a fun one I would subscribe to.
Well, I went and I looked at it. It was a little too wonky. Like, I thought there'd be something funny, but she really digs into public policy.
Oh.
And yeah, I read it and I got bored immediately.
I want funny missteps.
Right, it wasn't that
words.
It
I
wasn't.
want a pratfall. Give me a pratfall, verbal or otherwise.
I thought I might have something. We didn't have it. She was also a producer at 2020. I put this in for your partner or your husband. She produced segments for Liberace. Gifted children and motorcycle gangs. That's all in with Liberace.
Liberace, gifted children and
motorcycle gangs. She's written 3 books.
I wonder if she looks in the mirror and decides what race is. You know.
She's written 3 books, Marketplace Communication, Words Matter, and You Don't Say. Here's what I don't like about her. during the '04 campaign, she was the big person behind putting out all the communications regarding John Kerry and the Swift boat veterans. She helped craft that message about saying.
You think it was a Swift boat that took him down, or the sailboarding thing? Remember he was sailboarding with that wetsuit on? It was shortly after the Swift boat thing. It's like Dukakis coming out of a tank with a helmet on. The physical stuff, you got to be careful, you know.
Or who was it? Was it Gore that was duck hunting or something?
Yeah,
The best one, though, was Dukakis with the helmet on in the tank.
Yeah.
Well, and then it ruined, what's his name, the Bobby Jindal, when he did the rebuttal to Obama.
Oh, my God.
He came walking into Louisiana State House, and you can hear Keith Olbermann and Chris Matthews under their breath, and the mic, they didn't know the mic was on. They're like, oh, my God. He came walking out very kind of diminutive.
Bobby Jindal.
So that was our business birthday. Hey, our partner here on the Focus Group is Deep Discount. And as you know by now, if you head over to focusgroupradio.com, just click on the Deep Discount logo and shop away. We'd like you to go through focusgroupradio.com because then we get credit for it. But you could also go to deepdiscount.com.
I like getting a gold star.
We like the gold star. Yeah. So this week they've got a sale going on, and it's the graphic documentaries and special interests sale, documentary and special interest sale. And so this was a fun one for John and I. So we each picked two documentaries that we liked, and they probably cannot be any more different, although one kind of straddles. So, John, I'll let you talk about it.
They could not be any different. Okay, so my first pick, if you go to Deep Discount via Focus Group Radio, because we want to get Teacher's Pet, want to get the gold star, is a movie that was introduced to me by a delivery person. So I had a contract delivered to the office a while ago, and the woman who dropped it off had a book that she had in her hand, and she was reading Frank Herbert's Dune, one of the top 100 science fiction books of all time.
Orange. Every time you say Dune, I think orange.
All orange. You're
orange.
You're 100% right. It's the spice melange, right? So
painted orange.
She said to me, if you're a big fan of Dune, you've got to see a documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune. And it's about a movie. It's about the version of Dune that was never made by the director Jodorowsky, and it was a fascinating documentary, because he talked to Orson Welles, Mick Jagger, David Carradine, Salvador Dali. Everybody was going to be involved in this project. Visually, the thing was really fun to watch. But it was a great insight into a process of putting a movie together of a book as big as Dune with a director as visionary as Jodorowsky. A lot of fun. I'm glad I picked it up and watched it based on her recommendation. Probably an hour and 20 minutes or so. And people look at the movie and the work he did on Dune that never got made, and they see other things, references to this in other famous movies. So this was a pretty groundbreaking thing. So that's my first one. Highly recommended. If you love movie production or how these things get made, you'll like it. If you like Dune, you're going to love it even more. My next one stays in space, although real space, not orange fake space.
It's all fake.
It's called The Last Man on the Moon. And it's a documentary about Gene Cernan, who was the last NASA astronaut to step foot on the moon. And it's a really, really beautiful, cool documentary. And he talks about his impressions of being there, but also about the life that led him to actually get the opportunity to go to the moon.
It rocks.
Well, by that time, at the last of the Apollo missions, they had the moon car up there, and they were doing geological stuff. They were collecting specimens. But yeah, the nation was already beginning to move on from the novelty of it, which never wore off for me, but it did quite quickly wear off.
Did you go to the moon?
Yeah, I'd love to go to the moon.
How are you going to do?
I don't know.
Get a rock?
You ask me these penetrating questions.
Might as well go to Afghanistan.
I guess the journey for me would be the whole thing, but you're right. You said that once before. Like, you might as well just go to Afghanistan
right.
instead of the moon.
North Dakota.
So, all right, those are John's picks from documentaries. What are Tim's picks?
My picks are, of course, one of them kind of straddles Planet Earth, which is a
beautiful,
wonderful series from the BBC. It's a 4-disc set. It came out in '06, had unprecedented budget, about $25 million. There were over 5 years to produce, 2,000 days in the field, 40 cameramen, 200 locations, all done in high def. The 4-disc set is under $16, and you can't beat it.
Wait, on Deep Discount, it's under?
Right, for the DVD, the 4-disc set is $15.16.
Oh, boy.
And what I do to this, and it has a great soundtrack as well, or you can hear, I put it on when people are over for cocktail or whatever, because if you've got a big flat screen TV, just the visuals are unbelievable.
Playing other
You're having
music
cocktails,
over it.
yeah, and you're having cocktails, and just as, instead of having a blank TV
You know,
screen.
in another life, come back and open a lounge.
Yeah, I should. You're exactly
You really
right.
should. I mean, like a chill lounge.
That's the sort of thing where you just can't find that. It's not something you're
agree.
going to be able to stream. And the other one I recommend, if you're looking, particularly as we're getting into holiday time, if you're looking for a great gift for someone for the holidays or even a birthday or a special occasion or just to be nice to somebody, again, under $10, 20 Feet to Stardom.
Oh, this is you turned me onto this.
Right.
Amazing movie.
I've not recommended it to anybody that hasn't loved it, and it's about all of the voices that are behind all of the greatest rock, pop, and R&B hits, and but we didn't know who they were, so it was all the backup singers. And there's
a great movie.
Yeah, there's a story about Mary Clayton who did backup for the Rolling Stones for the song "Gimme Shelter," and you will laugh and you'll cry happily, but you'll have a whole new appreciation of the song.
Oh, and of the artists themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
not
it
just the
is
backup
so-
singers, but the bands and artists they work with had a real bond with these women.
Her story is unbelievable about how she was pregnant. It was raining. It was 1 a.m. I mean, it's just a great movie. But that's just a small piece of the overall documentary. And as I said, it's no one I've given it to doesn't not love it. Interviews with Bette Midler, Mick Jagger, Stevie Wonder, Sting, Bruce Springsteen. We know all the music, all the songs.
Tim and I were like searching for this. So on the documentaries and special interest sale, if you search within the sale page, it will tell you what's on sale. And we were madly searching. Tim goes, put in 6 feet from
Yeah, I
Stardom.
kept saying 6 feet from Stardom.
And finally, he calls me back later. He's like, guess what? It was 20 feet.
20 feet.
They were 20 feet from Stardom, not 6 feet from Stardom.
What was the new release this week?
New release is a movie I did not get to see, but I want to see it. It's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I love Chris Pratt. I liked the first movie a lot. Did you guys see Guardians? No, you know, I'm going to buy you guys some of this material myself from Deep Discount and get the ball rolling in that booth. Anyway, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is on Blu-ray and DVD. The movie did really well at the box office. One criticism I heard of it, and it was a minor one, was from a huge fan of the franchise, and he said they tried to put a joke in every scene. He goes, sometimes you just don't want a joke in every scene, but he said visually it's a lot of fun, and Chris Pratt was great. So that is that. So remember, focusgroupradio.com, find the logo, and what do we say, Garrett?
Thanks, Deep Discount.
With enthusiasm and joy. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to be welcoming Kimberly Acquaviva, PhD, MSW, CSE. She's going to be here to talk to us. I don't mean to run over those letters, but you earn those titles.
I'm just calling her Kim.
You're going to call her Kim. But she's here to talk about her new book, LGBTQ-Inclusive Hospice and Palliative Care, a practical guide to transforming professional practice. We're going to be right back. Stay with us.
Brought to you by Volkswagen. Visit VW.com to learn more. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with the Focus Group.
Try, really try.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
I never try anything. I just do it.
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, John Nash. We're all business, except when we're not. And right before break, John mentioned that we've got a special guest joining us today via Skype. Is it?
Or as the business birthday used to say, via satellite from the White House.
Via satellite from the White House. It's Kimberly Acquaviva. I love that last name, Acquaviva.
Thank you.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone with that last name. Is it Italian?
It is. It is. My grandfather was born in Sicily.
Look at how great you look. It's our best Skype hookup. Don't you say everybody in the booth is fingers up?
Yeah, everybody's like, my God, and it's satellite from the White House, Tim.
So hey, I said I was going to call you Kim, but
You know what? That's actually what I asked students to call me, and I have everyone call me Kim. So please do call me Kim.
Perfect. But we'll get into your pedigree. Aside from the fact that you're a scoutmaster, you've got a letterpress business with an antique printing press. You're one of the founding faculty at the George Washington School of Nursing, and you've written this book, which is LGBTQ. Inclusive Hospice and Palliative Care, a practical guide to transforming professional practice. And I was reading all this and all the information that was sent over, and John and I both said, "Well, how do you find?" You always say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Before we get, I know John wants to get off on the John was a graphic design guy, so he's going to be into the printing press stuff. But in terms of writing the book and the guide, it's been reviewed as the go-to guide and reference point for LGBT aging and health related issues. What was the impetus for writing the book?
You know, I had done a lot of thinking about ways to transform hospice and palliative care, and I've been writing for primarily academic audiences my entire professional career. And it hit me that the only way I could really change practice is if I write a very practical book for all of the healthcare disciplines in plain language and transform the way that they provide care to all patients and families. And that's really the only way to get that to trickle down to LGBTQ populations. Because unfortunately, whenever I write an article about LGBTQ-inclusive care, the people who pick it up are the people who are generally interested and already inclined to want to do that kind of care. So the focus of the book really is broader and gives suggestions for how to transform every aspect of hospice and palliative care.
Now, Kim, there have been a number of articles the last 2 or 3 years that have popped up about the LGBT population, aging, nursing home situations, hospice care, palliative care. And the theme that runs through them, I think, is something you're addressing quite head-on in your book, is that many of the staff, while well-intentioned, really don't understand some of the unique needs that this community faces when they want to administer care. So is that one of the underpinnings of what you found and what you write about?
Absolutely. There's a general assumption on the part of most healthcare professionals that every patient that they interact with will be heterosexual, cisgender, and that's kind of the go-to assumption that people make, unless the patient then says, "Oh, I am lesbian," or "I am transgender," and that becomes a bit of a problem even more severely as people move into healthcare settings where they're more vulnerable. So hospital, hospice, nursing home, long-term care, where coming out may actually put someone at real significant risk, and there may be fears of coming out. And so one of the reasons I wrote the book was I don't want people to have to come out to be able to get that good quality care. I want to shift the way that physicians, social workers, chaplains, nurses, nurse practitioners, counselors, the way that all of them think about the patients and families they interact with, so that instead of assuming that everyone is heterosexual and cisgender, that they think more broadly, that they really think more inclusively, so that no one has to come out in order to get that good care.
Could you give an example of where it might be an issue? I always have the impression that healthcare workers are a bit more compassionate and they've seen it all. They've seen it all a million times. But is there an example of a situation where it is needed, where somebody needs to be aware of somebody's LGBTQ status?
Sure. I mean, I think when it comes down to who someone's healthcare decision maker is, that's certainly an issue that we continue to see challenges within hospital settings and hospice and palliative care programs. That I as a lesbian, if I am in a hospice program, unless someone asks me questions and really tries to get a sense of who my family of choice is, they may not really have a full picture of who I am and who I want to have making decisions for myself. And the other thing is, if I were to go to the hospital and let's say that I am in an emergency room and there's an emergency situation, I'm in a vulnerable position as a lesbian. And I'm giving myself as an example because, all of us have times in our life when we do go to an emergency room, and it certainly runs across my mind. Do I tell this person, this healthcare provider, that I'd like them to call my partner, I'd like them to call my wife? And those are minor situations. Think about even bigger. When someone has a life-threatening illness, life-threatening situation, or they're facing a life-limiting illness within hospice, if they come out, will they get worse care? Will they be treated differently? And occasionally I'll hear healthcare professionals say, well, no, of course not. We treat everyone the same. But it's important to remember the historic context and history, not just back in the past, but history as in right now, that in more than 25 states in the United States, it's still legal to fire someone just for being gay. So knowing that and knowing kind of that lens, and then thinking about healthcare insurance. So everyone who is interacting with a healthcare professional, if they have health insurance, remember, any information, people may worry that that information may get back to their employer. So people can be fearful of these things, and they are real concerns.
So when you were putting the book together and in your professional experience, do you see knowledge and the intent to gain knowledge about this topic? Does it break down into geographic lines? Are there areas of the country where the reception is, this is fantastic, Kim, thank you for this resource, and others where it's like, we're dealing with XYZ, we have limited dollars, we'll get to the, did you find some differences geographically?
So that's a great question. I can't speak to whether or not there are geographic differences. What I will say is that from my own experience, when I present to groups, and I've presented a wide variety of groups in Iowa, Midwest, East Coast, all different places, all different kinds of audiences, there's one common theme that I've seen threaded throughout in terms of people's receptiveness to the message. And that is when I open up presentations by asking people to raise their hands if they grew up in a faith tradition of some kind. And almost every hand goes up. And I say, how many of you were raised in a faith tradition that said homosexuality was a sin? And usually half to 3/4 of the hands go up. Wow. And so I say, well, okay, I actually do not care if you think LGBTQ people are going to hell. And I say to them, I'm a lesbian, and I'm actually totally okay if you think I'm going to hell. But the destination of someone's soul is outside your scope of practice as a healthcare professional. Can you agree? And people are like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So you know what? I hope I'm not going to hell. That would suck. But let's focus on right now. And it's amazing how that gets people over that hurdle where people are used to being very defensive about someone attacking their religious beliefs. So I tell folks, it is totally okay for you to hold on to your religious beliefs about homosexuality, about whether or not it's natural for someone to be transgender. Totally okay with that. The goal is to keep those behaviors, those beliefs from impacting their behaviors when they interact with patients. So that's what I found. So dealing with the most conservative people, I've yet to find anyone religious who says, actually, someone's eternal soul is within my scope of practice as a physician or nurse. It's just never happened.
Well, give it time.
So I try to find the one point that we can agree on. And that seems to work. I think most people are genuinely, and most healthcare professionals are genuinely interested in doing the best work that they can with all patients and families. We just have to have, I think, at least my style when I present to folks and when I wrote the book, is from a place of non-judgment. I don't love that there are people out there who think I'm going to hell. That sucks. But it actually is completely irrelevant when it comes to the question of healthcare. The real question is, how do they behave when they're interacting with patients? And if I can take someone who has religious beliefs or moral beliefs around homosexuality and help them turn into a healthcare professional that delivers the same amazing care to an LGBTQ person as they do to anyone else, I've been successful. I don't care about changing how they believe.
When we first introduced you, you have a PhD, an MSW, and a CSE, and the CSE says that you're a certified sexuality educator.
I am.
What is that?
So I have a PhD in human sexuality education from the University of Pennsylvania, and then I pursued certification through the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, which is ASECT. And a certified sexuality educator has had to complete extensive training around sexuality education, has had to do quite a bit of teaching, writing, publishing, and you have to have a certain level of expertise to have that certification. So I use the letters after my name largely to help educate people about what sexuality education is and the certification. And ASECT is a fantastic organization. It's definitely worth checking out. If you or anyone you know is looking for an educator to come to your community, looking for an ASECT certified sexuality educator is a great route to go. Because if you go to their website, you can search, you can find someone in your community. And those folks who have been trained and certified through ASECT, they have a comprehensive body of knowledge and are able to present in ways that are inclusive of all audiences and work well with all audiences.
Now, Kim, I'm gonna make a glaring generalization, but hey, we do
love
that.
those.
We do that sometimes. We do that often on the show, but I'm gonna say this. I find that nurses are really, truly our front line for everything healthcare. If you're in the hospital, that's the person you see on a regular basis. The doctor might come in with a couple students in tow and literally blow through, like, okay, that's how you doing? I'm gonna go. But the nurses are the ones that are in the front line. Is that a profession in general? Have you found in your work and in all the work you've done, and including putting this book together, where these people really do truly care a great deal? They have almost as much knowledge, if not more, than a doctor, and they crave this kind of stuff. So the one side that I asked you about before of geographic differences and are people receptive to the message, this is the flip side question, which is, on the nursing side, is there a hunger for this?
So I had, throughout my career, I'm trained as a social worker, but I have, throughout my career, focused all of my professional work within a school of nursing. And that was very intentional. Nurses are the most trusted profession in the United States. There are millions of nurses, and they really touch patients in every community across the country in all different kinds of settings. And so for me, in making a choice about where I can have the greatest impact, I chose working with nurses and educating nurses because I believe that that's where I can have the greatest impact. The nurses and nurse practitioners that I work with, I can say, bar none, are amazing diagnosticians, very, very compassionate, very caring. I don't want to say that nurses are more caring than doctors or one discipline's more caring. But what I will say is they're trained differently. Yeah. So nursing, sometimes people will think that medicine is like up here and nursing is down here, that it's somehow a lower level on a hierarchy. They're actually incredibly different disciplines. They have entirely different approaches. And so nurses who go into nursing choose it. They don't choose it because they couldn't be a doctor. They chose that they want to be a nurse, because nursing really has a holistic, person-centered approach. So it's not that nurses are more caring. It's that, in my opinion, nurses have chosen a profession where caring for the human being is a central focus. And physicians, absolutely caring, compassionate, amazing folks, but it's a different discipline. They do have, just by the nature of the healthcare system in America, fewer minutes in each patient interaction than nurses and nurse practitioners do. I love nurses. My grandmother was a labor and delivery nurse. If I'm sick, give me a good nurse practitioner any day. But I am biased. I teach in a school of nursing, and I love nurses.
We're speaking with Kimberly Acquaviva, who we love the last name.
Yeah.
Acquaviva, if you're listening here on the focus group. And we're going to change a little bit. You have a very fulfilling career, but you also are running a print shop out of your garage. So what's that about?
I am. So I'd always wanted an old-fashioned printing press. I don't know why. It was something in my head since I was a really little kid.
They're cool. They're cool.
Ago,
they're very cool.
I thought it'd be really fun. So I found an old Chandler and Price printing press in Indiana and had it restored, and then had it like trucked to my house and put in my garage. And so I have all of the cabinets with lead type, and I hand set old lead type to do letterpress. It's very much a hobby. My wife jokes that it's like the world's most expensive hobby because it was supposed to be a business, but I just love it so much that I just give everything away.
But this printing press is like a half a ton, right?
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's massive. And when they delivered it, so they brought it off the truck, they bring it in the garage. It doesn't come with instructions. No one tells you how to use it. So I had to look up all of these old, like 1898 manuals, and there are all these little holes to oil. And so I basically had to learn how to use it just by trial and error. In a lot of ways, it's interesting. I think about printing as being very much a parallel to a lot of what we do in healthcare, which is it is something incredibly complex. Each patient is completely different. We don't have a user manual for each person we interact with, but we also have to be incredibly careful because mistakes can be deadly. And so with my letterpress business, if I put my hand inside as it's going like this, I'm going to lose a hand. And similarly, within healthcare, if we deliver insensitive care to LGBTQ people or to anyone, we can't undo that interaction. So the mindfulness of printing, I try to bring into my work educating healthcare professionals as well.
Wow. And thus is born to another partner, because my husband has a woodworking shop and equipment's coming in and out. It's a hobby. It's an expensive one, but it's justified when a little repair gets done or a frame gets made.
I think it's a great thing. The video is great.
I studied graphic design in college, and my first job out of school was typography. So the entire notion of leading and M-dashes and I thought, and it all relates to a physical process. It used to be how the type was put in the racks and the leading is a little space under the
Maybe
words.
We should get a printing press.
It's so much fun.
Not at a half a ton. But the other thing I was going to say is the other thing you do is you give your time very generously to the Capitol Hill Scouts Troop 500. I was one away from Eagle. Was that Star or Life?
Life.
I was a Life Scout. I couldn't think of a good Eagle project, and I bailed after that. But I loved scouting. And I love the Klondike Derby and all that stuff. Yeah.
So you're a scout. You're a scout. You're a scoutmaster.
I'm an assistant scoutmaster, and I'm very, very fortunate. When my son was very little, he's 17 now, but he really wanted to do scouting. And I was a little nervous about scouting because at the time they had some policies that were not inclusive of LGBTQ folks. So I looked around online and I found out that our local scout troop here on Capitol Hill had a public statement of inclusion that was on their website that said that they chose to be inclusive of all LGBTQ scouts and volunteers. And so signed my son up as a Tiger Cub. He started as a Cub Scout, rose through the ranks. And then when he was a Boy Scout, I became an assistant scoutmaster. Our troop continues to be fully inclusive, and we've been inclusive forever. The Scouts literally do not care that I'm a lesbian. It's of no interest to them. They want to know, am I driving a load of Scouts on a camping trip? That's about it. And that's really how scouting is supposed to be.
Well, talk about how far we've come. I was a Cub Scout in Connecticut, in Stamford, Connecticut, and the pack that I belonged to, where we would meet every week, the husband and wife got a divorce. And so the pack was dissolved because the fact that she was now a single mom in the house, they didn't feel it was a good representation for the Scouts. And so then the whole thing just kind of went away and we had to find a new place to go and so forth. So talk about coming a long way in a short amount of time. So good for you.
We have. And I will say this, I love scouting. And even before the BSA, the Boy Scouts of America, changed their policy, my experiences with Boy Scout volunteers was nothing but positive. I did Wood Badge, which is a leadership training. I staff Wood Badge. And to a person, the people in scouting that I have met and the adults in scouting are the people that I wish everyone could have a chance to be around, particularly right now in America with everything going on politically. I'm very fortunate to have a large circle of scouting friends who all very much focus on respect for people, which is nice. It's a refreshing.
I couldn't agree more. My experience in scouting and my scoutmasters and my assistant troop, all the people led to a really positive experience. I think I could still do trustworthy, loyal, helpful, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, reverent.
Nice. And you know what? Even though you aren't an Eagle Scout, you are always a Scout. And
there you go.
It has a huge influence on people's lives.
Hey, Kimberly, we have to let you go, unfortunately. I want to remind our listeners that we've been having a wonderful conversation with Kimberly Acquaviva, PhD, MSW, CSE. We now know what that means. And she's the author of a new book called LGBT-Inclusive Hospice and Palliative Care, A Practical Guide to Transforming Professional Practice. Just before you go, if you've been watching, sample chapters, examples of like chapter 1 and 2, I'm going to look at. Chapter 1 is self-awareness and communication, and that deals with the professional and how their awareness of their patient situations. But the second chapter is sex, gender, orientation, behavior, and health. Focuses on what healthcare professionals need to know and how they have to dialogue with their patients. So I think this is a pretty amazing book. And anything else you want to share with us before we have to let you
No.
go?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on the show.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Kimberly Acquaviva has been our guest. We're going to take a really quick break, and when we return, we have a very brief shop talk, so stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Brought to you by Volkswagen. Visit VW.com to learn more. Now back to the focus group with Tim and John.
Because he has a lot of chutzpah.
An entertaining look at the world of business.
Heads are spinning, heads are spinning.
Listen, laugh, and learn.
I am not gay. I never have been gay.
That's perverse.
You know, we've come a long way when that sounds normal. Hey, it's Tim Bennett here with my good friend and co-host John Nash. We're all business except when we're not. We want to again thank Kimberly Acquaviva. And the one thing we didn't do is we didn't mention that she does have that letterpress business. It's
you saw the video,
yeah, and I wanted to give the address to it, but of course I put I think I put it away. But I'll post it on our website. And you can take a look at some of it. It's actually inkandimp.com.
Ink and Imp.
Ink and Imp. And it's funny because she's doing the
and it's like a hand
cards and stuff. Yeah. So as John mentioned before we went to break, he found a shop talk here, and the title is interesting. It says, "Forget sentences your interviewer doesn't want to hear. A word we use every day could sabotage you in a job interview." And it reminds me a lot of the old cliche of "there's no I in team." And
that's it. That's it. That's shop talk.
Is that okay? Thank you for joining us, John. You want to say goodbye?
No, but you nailed it. That's exactly right.
But that's essentially what it was. And I having done an awful lot in previous life,
was there merit to this?
You know, there is for a number of reasons. And I do think you and I come at this from two different areas. I come out of the corporate side, and it's all very much about collaboration and working for the whole and making sure everybody is working for a common goal. You having had your own businesses and being an entrepreneur, it's almost unavoidable not to say I or get used to saying I because you're doing everything, right? So whereas if in a big corporation, one person may have responsibility for one thing, if you have a business and you're the accountant and you're the writer, and then you're also being the HR guy, whatever it is, or negotiating with clients, it is an I thing because it's you doing it for the most part. So as I read this, I thought this is very much about a business or a corporate philosophy.
I never thought of it, and the way you just set that up showcases the two of us brilliantly, because I didn't think I thought how difficult it would be for me to not say I did this or I did that. And you just explained it. You explained it perfectly.
Well, I say we all the time for you and I. You probably more often than not will say I, but I understand because that's where you're coming from, and I get that. I found when I would interview people, and they talk about a company where a woman was hiring, and I guess that the company was sold to Walmart. It was a company, and they were trying to hire managers, an e-commerce site. And she talked about the type of people she looked for, and she was looking for people that were collaborative. And I thought about all the successful people that I had hired in my corporate days. I always had 5 criteria for myself, and if you didn't meet 2 of them, I wouldn't take your resume any further. Now, I'm sure I missed great people. But the people I did hire, I think I was pretty
Was this
good.
some headhunter day, or was this?
This was my headhunter day, but it was also the philosophy about working in collaboration as a team. So I would always pick somebody who went away to college. I don't care where it was, but if you stayed somewhere in a dorm, you had to negotiate. You had to figure out how you were going to get laundry done. Somebody that was maybe on a team or very involved in a club, because again, it's about working with groups. Someone that was in a Greek letter organization. Someone that had an interesting or an odd major. Because there was a defensiveness there, and then it was all. And then the what was the 5th criteria was well, when you came to see me, if your shoes weren't shined and your nails were nasty, then you didn't go any further. But that was once you got in.
That could be on anybody's list. Presentation and grooming, in my opinion. No, I
know it was volunteer and hobby work. You know, if you had a hobby. So, for instance, you would come in and say you went away to college and you have this animation.
I love animation, cycle.
So I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll bring them in. But if there was nothing on there. It was just simply you were summa cum laude. You'd be like, well, okay, well, what else? What else is about him? That doesn't tell me anything other than he had his nose in a book.
You know what I'm surprised about? This stuff never gets old for me. And my last class, my last Q&A with my current mentor, and this class is called Polish and Portfolio, so they're preparing you for your job interviews and stuff. I'm smiling because I know I'm months away from worrying about anything like that. And at my age, I've gone through the gauntlet before. But he told a story about DreamWorks was looking to hire a bunch of animators, and they're usually contract positions, and they found a couple of talented people they wanted to talk to, and they were going to do their first, which is very common nowadays, the first interview was going to be Skype. And he said that the recruiter came to talk to him later on and was shocked by what the candidates were doing. So one of the interviews, a guy was sitting in sweatpants and a T-shirt on his bed, all unmade,
like Grey Gardens,
up against the pillows. The laptop is on his lap. There's a box of Cocoa Puffs or something off to the right, and the interviewer, the recruiter, was like, she couldn't take her eyes off how a pigsty the room was, how poorly dressed he was. And it totally circumvented, or short-circuited, sorry, that's the better word. It short-circuited the talent that he was showing on his reel. Later in the day, she does another Skype interview with someone in Oregon, and the person was sitting, like when we had Kimberly on, the person was sitting in front of like a neutral background. They had a shirt on.
Is that not the best background we've ever seen for Skype?
She popped. She looked fantastic.
Like, oh my gosh,
it
we've got to get that.
Like satellite TV. But it clearly came down to the fact, and then he was telling the students in the class that he goes, one word in an email could lose you a job. One misplaced word. And there were some people made, like you could see a little row of faces during the Q&A, and some people made a face. And I wanted to jump in and tell them, yeah, you know, everybody should be listening to this. So this eye thing was intriguing to me only because I think if you go in armed with a very slight filter, a second or two, whatever the time delay is, to think about how you're saying it. If you have to say, I did this, I did that, it's probably in relation to ownership of a business or ownership of a project. But I agree with you. And after your explanation of corporate versus entrepreneurial,
small business or entrepreneurial,
I'm going to start thinking more in terms of like when I don't use the word we. Usually I'll say my co-host and I. Like
I'll say we all the time, and sometimes, and I've always done that because that was my training to say we. Whether it was just myself or not, I just say we because I'm thinking, okay, the whole. I'm part of a team that has to get something.
So if somebody did this, though, if somebody interviewed and it was I, is that in corporate land? Is that a showboater?
It's ego, yeah.
You don't want that. You don't want a showboater, right?
That's called a high mo, low po, high maintenance, low potential.
High
maintenance, low potential, and you want a high po, low mo. You want a high potential, low maintenance. So if somebody Karen out like high po, low mo, high po. We'd be like, you know.
Did you guys laugh when you were doing this?
It's just, you know, the vernacular.
High-mo, low-po, high-mo.
I do have a funny story. You'll like this. You know Brian Johnson.
I love Brian.
He was interviewing for a job, and I just thought this was hilarious. I won't mention the company, but it was a Japanese company, and it was electronics. And he was interviewing for a job via Skype. And he said the woman was not prepared, not organized, the HR woman.
Yeah.
And she gets her lunch delivered
while they're
having the interview. So she takes a Post-it note and puts it over her camera and continues the interview. He said, I'm looking at a yellow Post-it note.
So
she put over the camera and's eating and still interviewing him. He's like, as if I wanted to work there. At that point, he's like, I didn't even want to.
Wow,
that is imagine.
You've never told me that story before.
I peed my pants. I thought, how obnoxious. He said she wasn't paying attention. She's fiddling in her desk and whatever. And then her lunch comes. She's like, oh, and she's talking. He said she pays for lunch. Like the takeout comes, she gives the person money, and then she just takes a Post-it note and puts it right over the computer camera, and keeps going with the Skype.
Now, as a sidebar, just as a quick sidebar, the guy Tim is talking about is someone you hired to be in the sports area.
Sports marketing area at Subaru.
His name is Brian, and he is one of the nicest, coolest guys. Has a beautiful family now. But it's funny that when Tim talks about this, I'm only saying it because I think that the amusement factor is key. You hired people that also had similar senses of humor.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that you were one of the first calls he made when the post after.
We screamed. We were laughing so hard. I mean, and because it was just so absurd, that you just couldn't imagine. But he's really done quite well for himself.
He's out west, right?
He's now making he's in the advertising and doing a lot of the commercials. If you see a commercial on TV for Amazon, Brian's done it. He's the ad guy at Amazon. So good for
Brian.
him.
We're both Prime customers. I'm talking right.
I've tried. We need him as a sponsor.
You try to get coin out of them?
Yeah, you know the way it is. These big companies.
We know somebody though. That's the thing.
Well, I'll let you sick. I'll sick you on him.
All right. Hey, we want to thank Kimberly Acquaviva for joining us today via Skype. She's 5 gold stars on Skype. It's like she had her own studio. And all the guys in the booth are like, yeah, Kimberly had her own studio. She was schooled in this. Want to thank John, Garrett, and Allison in the booth, or Allie, sorry. I don't know. Allie's on the booth.
Allison, where'd that come from?
I don't know. I don't know where that came from.
Donna, there she is out there. Look at her.
Oh, there's Allie. Thank you, Tim. A big thanks to Deep Discount for being a partner of ours on the show. Check out the documentaries that are on sale at the site this week. Get there by focusgroupradio.com. Click on their link and go through. We like getting a little credit for that. And a big thank you, of course, to Volkswagen Group of America. We're currently driving the all-track wagon. Atlas is big, and Atlas just got a lot of good reviews. And a friend of mine just picked up a 2018 Tiguan, which he's very happy with.
Really?
Yeah.
You get the big one?
Got the SEL, the top-of-the-line edition.
I want to get next.
And he is very pleased, and Tim is itching to get out of one into another because it's all the same cool brand, but you want a different experience.
I want room. I got big shoulders.
All right, so what do we say? We say, don't text and drive.
Arrive alive.
There you go. See you next week, folks.
Okay.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Formerly on SiriusXM Satellite Radio and now accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.